It's time for the Strange O'Clock podcast, where you get to hear strange news with Christian views.
Easier it becomes, and then over time it just becomes the second nature that you wanted it to be all along. But that it just takes through sheer willpower to get started. And I know people who are more talented than me that have never gotten started, and all I did was just grit my teeth and work hard because I wanted it so badly. And then over time, now it's second nature to me, you know. And
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's no magic. I mean, I do think there are some people that do have been gifted with a talent more than others. I see that, but I still think that you can work hard and achieve good things, and even if you don't have, everyone wants that magical something, and we all want it, but many of us don't know if we have it anyway. So you just work hard and let it happen naturally. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, you do the best with what you got, and that's pretty much what I've done.
Well, you've definitely been an inspiration to us, either to write or to basically read the Bible after reading your books. But I listen via audiobook or audible.com rather. It's just a lot easier to do things. And I read Dragon King, and then I'm on the Chronicles of the Nephilim, and I downloaded the Spiritual World of Moses and
Same.
I forget Moses and who. It was somebody else.
And Egypt, the Spiritual World of Moses in Egypt. Have you heard Noah Primeval yet?
Not yet. I think Miss Christina has.
Okay, well,
all of them.
Okay, because I was going to say, I just reread the Moses novel this week. I re-recorded it because it was the very first novel I ever did 11 years ago, and I had no experience. I have a little bit of thespian background. I'm a natural public speaker, so I know how to do it basically, but I didn't know how to read slowly enough. And I went back and I realized, oh my gosh, I read my Noah novel way too fast. And after all these years, I went back and so now if you have the Noah novel on Audible, it should automatically have the newest version, which is like several hours longer now. Plus, I added the appendices in there. Originally, the appendices I did not have in there, but now they are. So
I love those.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to kind of break the ice by getting to know each other a little bit. Although I've talked to Brian, this will be our 5th time ever since 2015. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me, and I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I just wanted to just get to know each other a little bit, and I am recording, but I'm going to delete the ice breaking here. So I wanted to read your auto bio on your website. Sure. Hopefully it's not too, what I'm saying doesn't come across too windy or whatever, but I mean I love introducing our guest. So I know before it was just me flying solo as Tiger for God Radio, but now we've got a heavy hitter here, Michael from Spirit Wars, and he's live every other day. He is his grandfather. He's a pro, yeah. His grandfather was an evangelist, Don Basham, so he definitely has that in his like spiritual and physical DNA.
That sounds familiar to me. I don't know.
My uncle worked with Derek Prince Ministries, so heavy on the spiritual warfare, foundational Christian side. But I did some time in Asia studying Chinese and Japanese and doing missionary work there. And I was in a famous cult for a while called the Children of God.
Oh, yeah.
It was Jim Jones.
No, but
it's not
I remember
bad.
Children of God, yeah.
And Johnny McMahon accidentally called me in Taiwan, and then I got thrust into this fringe Christian world, which we were just all over you guys for a decade. Like this concept of just bringing back the Bible engaging with lesser known things like the Book of Enoch and the Nephilim, and it's been an amazing journey. And then I finally got a chance to meet Derek Gilbert and attend to the Warriors Conference in San Diego a few months ago. So I'm still starstruck meeting you guys, and I'm basically just the new fanboy. Like, I'm the more dorky new guy, the Spider-Man among the giants of the Marvel universe.
I've been starstruck since 2013, so I'm kind of like on the down low here.
Carolyn has been there. Yeah.
We just a few weeks ago we're going to do a series of podcasts where we're just talking about all the stuff that we love, giants, Nephilim, myth, and all this stuff with me, Derek Gilbert, Doug Van Dorn, and Judd Burton, and Josh.
I know him.
Oh, yes.
We know
He's in
him.
our group. He's in our group.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
yeah. So, and we were kind of like, we were all the guys who, and it's funny because the first time we talked, which is now available, and we're going to be recording this Sunday as well. But the first time we got together, it's just a guy sitting around talking and jiving about all this cool stuff that we love without some particular agenda. And but we all had a moment where we kind of sort of started talking about Michael Heiser's work and how it affected each of our lives. And so basically, we were like the old timers who actually discovered Michael Heiser's work when it was still the myth that is true, half written on the internet. And so we were the guys that sort of all discovered it at that same time, 15 years ago or something like that. It's kind of cool.
That's awesome.
That's very cool.
How much his work has affected the world. And then we're like his evangelizers.
Yes. Yeah, Gandalf, as the Canary Cry guys call him.
Gandalf.
Ryan, how did you actually come across that? Because it's such a niche thing, especially 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, just a needle in a haystack. But
totally, absolutely.
I've never heard that story. I mean, how did you come across?
I basically stumbled across it on the internet, basically Googling. I was Googling for research on Noah and Nephilim and stuff. And so at that time, there probably wasn't as much on the internet as now, of course. There was a lot, but also I was looking for evangelical type stuff, stuff that I could trust more anyway. And the reason why was because I was a screenwriter. I still am, but I was a screenwriter, and I came up with the idea of writing a movie about Noah because I'd known about this Nephilim stuff, and I heard a little bit more about it. I thought giants and stuff, that would be a cool movie that maybe Hollywood would want to make, right? And so that's why I started to do the research on it, and I wrote a script for a director on Noah, and then I found out that Darren Aronofsky was trying to get his movie made. And when I heard that, I knew, okay, he's gonna beat me to the punch. But anyway, I was doing the research for it, and that's how I stumbled upon it. And of course, at that time, then Michael was just, I contacted him, I became friends, and, he was helping me throughout. And, but then what happened was when I found out they were going to make the movie of Noah, Darren Aronofsky, I thought, and I was worried that, maybe he had some of this cool stuff I had. And of course, he did do some ancient research, but it turned out to not be at all the biblical stuff that I had found. But I was worried about that, so I thought, I want to get mine out before his, so at least it doesn't look derivative, and I'll never get the movie made. So I guess it's time to write my first novel, and I decided to adapt my screenplay into the novel, and that became Noah Primeval, which was the very first book that launched, and that was just when Kindle was just starting to rise and become big, and you could put your Kindle book up and put it up for free and get 20,000 downloads. Wow. And so I actually had done that when I first started, I wasn't thinking I was going to make money on it, just a little bit, besides I'm thinking this stuff's so weird. Christians are probably going to be scared of it and think I'm a heretic. And, but I put it up there, and man, 25,000 downloads for free. And then that kickstarted interest in it, and it started selling really well. And I thought, there's more to this story. I should write more. I should write Enoch, the prequel.
Oh, I loved Enoch. I read that one first.
Yeah. So
I'm halfway through.
Did you find reading it first was worth it?
I I actually, I in like maybe 3 months, I went through all your books on Audible. I got addicted. And I originally bought the book that you wrote about understanding it all. I think it's Gods and something. It's not.
Oh, When Giants Were Upon the Earth?
Yes, that's the first one I got. And then I read about all your little books in there, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get Audible because I drive a lot, and I'm going to, give it a try. So I ended up buying Noah first, but then I heard Enoch was before that. So I stopped Noah, and I started with Enoch, and I loved it. I mean, I just was.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm still addicted. I was like waiting I've gone through all your books.
That's awesome.
And I just want to quickly share with you, because I have to go back to work right now, but I just wanted to tell you that I was really walking a path of getting into things that I shouldn't have, like witchcraft. And I grew up in the church, my whole life, but I was playing with things I shouldn't. I even go to Salem on Halloween.
Wow.
I mean, I was really entrenched in it, just starting.
Wow.
And when I read his books I read to me, that's when I learned that the source of everything with the fallen angels, and that I was playing with things that I had no business. And I just wanted to let you know, it completely stopped me. Wow. And I've gotten closer to the Lord, and I'm walking the right path now. I just wanted to share that with you.
Praise God. That's awesome.
Very beautiful to hear, Christina. Thank you for sharing your testimony.
Yes.
That really is encouraging.
Yeah.
And
it has such an impact on me. And I want to thank you all for letting me come here. I have to run out to work, but I'm gonna check in with you guys. And it was great meeting you. And I hope we can get together again soon.
It was great meeting you too, Christina. Now, can we use your conversation?
Course.
Awesome.
Of
great.
Please do.
Now, do you mind if maybe we publish the video? But the jury is out. Whether I'll post the video or just audio.
No problem. I think that this can help other people.
I think so too.
Because witchcraft is getting very big.
It's one of the number one most popular religions.
Yes, it is.
In terms of paganism.
And boy, did your books get me in line. That's all I got to say.
That is amazing. I had to just put you in touch with Brian because, if I was an author and somebody told me that it changed their life, I would just be.
Oh, and I didn't know anything about the temple. I read all the ones about the what was the next series, the Chronicles of the Apocalypse.
Yes, Chronicles of the Apocalypse. Yes.
So you taught me things that I didn't even know, and I grew up in the church. All about the temple, and I was addicted. I still am to the Nero story. Loved it all. It was just it made it so real. I feel like I was there.
That's cool.
Especially how you read it too. How you're.
That was my favorite series actually to write, was the Apocalypse series. And I do believe that it had more of my heart and soul in it than anything, because I had studied that stuff for like 25 years. And it was actually a lot of that theology in there is stuff that a lot of Christians aren't familiar with. And I had studied for many years, and I would occasionally teach it here and there, but I don't have like a big teaching ministry, right? I'm more of an artist. And so when I realized that, oh my gosh, I could put this into the novel form, it embodied so much of my time and energy that I put for the kingdom that now is being used in a way I never had thought it could be. And so that's my favorite part.
I love that one just as much. So, it taught me so much. And I just, like I said, it makes it all seem real. Now, when I read the Bible, I can see it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. After your books, I can see it. And it's wonderful. And
in your mind's eye.
That's
awesome.
I tell everybody, you got to read books. You got to read these books. So.
Although I was going to say, but my favorite character that I've written in all my books, can you guess who it would be?
Ariel, not Ariel. What's the angel that she always makes so much jokes about? It just
Uriel.
Ariel.
That's a good guess. That's a good guess. It's not though. You can make a good argument that he's one of my personal more enjoyable characters to write. I'll say that. Absolutely. But in terms of like what I treasured so much was Rahab, actually, but because of her story was the biggest arc that I've written of any character, and she became such a strong woman, yet a godly woman. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And to be able to try to capture that for me, and to try to enter into an experience of suffering of something that I can't understand as a man, but through my imagination, I went on that journey, and I just feel like she was the strongest strongest character that I've ever written, you know.
Loved her. Can I jump in? One little thing I didn't share with you either is I am a recovering stripper, dancer my whole life. So Ray really connected with me also. So
That's
that was
great.
yes. So that was pretty amazing how you wrote her. And also how you Mary Magdalene, how she was, because that's me. You know, I was starting to get into things I shouldn't. I was also kind of a woman of the night, but I was getting into things, you know, and she did. But how you wrote her in your book, Mary Magdalene.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
For those who are
Christina.
listening, you know, the Mary Magdalene was the woman that was, you know, possessed by many demons and such. And what is it that it's sort of like the I forgot what was it that I did. I've written so many characters. Sometimes I lose track of the differences. I sometimes try to make characters different from what everyone you know thinks of them as being. And Mary Magdalene is always thought of as being a prostitute. Mm-hmm. What did I make? Didn't I make her like a
she was a high priestess.
A high priestess? That's it. That's it.
I loved it. Yes.
That's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And most likely she was. I mean, that whole world that you just brought it to life, like it was just part of life. Like the Peneus thing, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
It was definitely. Thank you so much, Christina.
Oh, what about movies? Movies? Because I would love that.
You can stay with us as long as you want to, but I'm just concerned about, you know, you said you had to go to work, but you could stay with us as long as you want. You can stay with the entire time if you'd like.
I just want to ask that quick question. Are there any movies? That would be so amazing.
No, don't count on it. They're never going to be made into movies, not in my lifetime. And the reason why I know that is I know how the movie making business is, and the problem is that they're all $100 million movies, and the only companies that can make because they're effects, they're giants and all this stuff, and angels and stuff, and the only people who can afford that are the big studios, and they are never going to make Christian movies like that, ever. Yeah, it's sad.
It would be amazing stories. Yeah. Kids really be interested in the Bible if they made these movies.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. Yeah, in fact, that's one of the reasons, when I did first start writing it, I thought, well, maybe it would, and that's why I did write the first Noah script. But that was 12 years ago, right? And that would be, it's Noah, the Ark, angels and demons and warfare and all this kind of stuff. And I thought Hollywood would be interested, and they might have been. Obviously, they made the secular versions, right? The godless versions, but
right.
But I just thought that they like angels and demons, so that's not too bad, right? But now Hollywood is so woke that there's no way on earth that they would ever have any positive Christian message to it. They might do Bible movies still, but they're going to be they're not going to be positive messages.
Right.
Unless they go through. Now, I'm going to qualify that. There are movies being made, like Redeeming Love just came out, and Affirm Films at Sony. I will grant that they're making. I actually wrote a script on Ruth, the Book of Ruth, and
really?
Affirm Films is making that, but I don't know how much they've changed it because they just sort of bought my script and dumped me. And
what about Jezebel? Would have made a great one too. I love that.
Yeah, so Jezebel is owned by a couple of independent producers who are trying to raise the money and make it independently. And to be quite frank, they have not had good fortune being able to do that. So they're still trying to. They're but they're not making much headway. Well, so I don't. There's not a lot of good news. There's not a lot of hope for Jezebel.
We need to pray that one of your books gets turned into a movie, because I really think it would probably wake up too many people. That's probably why they don't want to make it.
Yeah.
It woke me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good point, Christina. And I want to interject that when I was just looking, and I haven't had a chance to read all of your books yet, but I'm getting there. It's just been pretty crazy life on my end, but definitely followed all of your interviews. And I think about the robe, or the 10 Commandments, or Ben-Hur. And in the early days of Hollywood, there was an honoring of movies that were biblical. And as the world kind of rejects globalism and the New World Order, that there will be a place again to want to have great epic Christian movies. And then what are they going to make? Like another dumb Christian movie from God TV? No, they're going to want to find movie scripts like the ones that Brian Godawa's made. And you've already got them all laid out. Let me ask you about any comic book possibilities, because that is, I've seen as a bridge to these bigger budget movies. Sometimes you'll have sort of like a graphic novel.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Like that in the works? From the start, I wanted to make a graphic novel version of all of the entire series, but I just haven't been able to find. And for a while, I looked and tried to find an artist. The problem is that the art will take a year for a book, and artists, it's too expensive to pay an artist to do it. It's like, thousands and thousands and thousands, because it's a full-time job, and it takes a year to do that artwork. So in other words, there's no artist out there who's willing to do the work on spec like I did. I do all my work on spec, but artists, and I understand why. And that's why a lot of comic book artists usually do their own. They write their own and they draw their own. So it's really rare, unless you're in the DC, unless you're in the professional publishing world like DC Comics, then you have separate writers and separate illustrators, but that's big money, right? But in terms of independent stuff, most independents do their own work. And so, sadly, I don't think it'll ever be graphic novel, material. But hey, if there's ever any illustrator out there who wanted to do it and come up with a deal, I definitely would be open to it, because I'd love to. In fact, I even had a great idea for a video game. Based on my Joshua Conquest story and stuff, and that would be really cool, and kids would love it, and it would teach theology through experience, So I don't know.
That's awesome.
That is so exciting. In China, they have long series of video games pertaining to the ancient Chinese wars, the Three Kingdoms period, and the Japanese likewise. They celebrate their equivalent of the Old Testament story. So I just look at us, I'm like, what's wrong with us? We're just making like diddly squat regarding, there should be video games about the Bible and about really the Judeo-Christian culture. So we're putting the word out there, and excuse me, I'm getting choked up. We're putting the word out there, and people are going to start praying, and they're going to get this sense of urgency as we're having these revolutions worldwide against the enemy. This needs to be one of the things that we pray towards, is to get this really exciting Christian content out there and to promote your books. And we're actually looking at getting some little mini fringy Christian bookstores here downtown, here in Western North Carolina. So I'll be talking to you later on about possibly promoting your books. Anyone that's out there that's got DVDs, we just interviewed Nick Searcy, produced Capital Punishment.
I know.
The famous
Nick,
Hollywood actor.
Yeah.
Just had him on a show. We're about to release that, and we're going to be promoting his DVDs as well. So.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, that's so cool that you know him. Yes, that's such a good friendship.
There was a secret cabal of conservatives out in Los Angeles called years ago, called Friends of Abe. And we met secretly, and we grew to like 1,500 people. But then the Obama administration sought, and Gary Sinise was kind of the head of it all. And we were meeting and networking, and it was growing. And then the Obama administration was seeking to force them to reveal their membership. It was just evil. And so Gary decided to break the membership, to break the organization down, because he wouldn't want to give them up. He wouldn't want to give up the membership, roles to the government. This is the kind of stuff that's going on in our life. Like, I read about that stuff in 1984. I thought that was like Russian Soviet communism. It's like, no, it's actually happening in America, in our lives right now, and that's what they're doing. And of course, we have the same things that are going on right now as well. But so it was really sad. But made a lot of connections and met a lot of people of like mind, a lot of Christians in Hollywood. There are a lot of Christians in Hollywood, and at different levels of being affected by Hollywood too, So it's an interesting world, but I'm glad I'm gone.
I need to find him. I'm only 15 miles from Hollywood. Yes.
Yeah, there are a lot of ministries in Hollywood too. Hollywood Prayer Network is the big one that sort of has a vision and heart to get people, saved with the gospel in Hollywood, and to pray for people and such. And they're, they're a very diplomatic, apolitical organization that I know the heads of it, and they're good people. And there are lots of other ministries there too. I was, for many years, I was involved in several of them.
Praise God.
That's great.
You've been the salt of the earth, Brian Godawa. And
yeah,
I feel like you're just getting warmed up. The kind of Elvis has left the building. There are so many talented movie people that can produce and direct and act and write screenplays. And I have several of them are my siblings, but they just didn't want to go through the whole Harvey Weinstein grooming thing.
And basically it's gotten so bad that honestly, long time Hollywood people are moving out, like me, and people more than me, who we've always wanted to. There's been many of us who've wanted to, we had a vision to not live in our own ghetto and create our own art, like Christian movies, right? But we wanted to work within the system and create good stories, excellent entertainment, and have some of our values, because a lot of people have our share of values, and that can make a lot of money, right? So there's a lot of us who've had that mentality. But with what's happened in the recent, even just within the last 3 years, what has happened in Hollywood, it is so choked out the ability to do that long-term, Christians and conservatives in Hollywood are leaving and seeking to create a parallel economy, not because we want to, like, we're going to create our own art. It's because we have to, because they're literally like, they're not hiring us anymore. They're discriminating against us, and they're kicking us out. They're persecuting us. And of course, this is all okay because, it's only wrong to discriminate when it's not left. But so I've just seen that there's parallel economies being created out of necessity. And one of those, I think, I just got done watching a movie off the Daily Wire. They have a new movie out called Shut In. And the Daily Wire is just a conservative organization that supports Christians, atheists, and Jews of all stripes who just want to have some good values in their and don't want ideological propaganda preached to them. They want some of their values in movies that are entertaining. And so, they're doing the impossible. They're just going to start making movies. They've already got 2 movies out there, really great movies. One's called, you have to sign up on their website and pay for a month in order to access the movies, but it's totally worth it. The newest one's called Shut In, and it's a thriller. This isn't like political stuff. It's just good movies that have good moral values to them ultimately, And so I just finished watching Shut In, and it's a fantastic thriller, very exciting, scary, and all that, and great acting and directing and such. So we're just doing this out of necessity because they're literally. I know the producers who make the movies, and they're telling me, like, we can't get anything made because they're not letting us make our stuff anymore. They don't want any any Christian stuff, any conservative stuff. It's got to be woke. It's got to be completely leftist ideological propaganda, or you can't get it. You can't get it made. So, real sad.
It is.
Brian, go ahead, Geraldine. Did you have something you want to? Did you want to ask something or?
Well, I just want to concur with you. That was the impression I had gotten, that Hollywood was really leaning left. And if you don't lean left, even if you are just neutral, I remember Chris Pratt not going to and we're not, trying to say that you have to be, a Republican or a conservative to be a Christian. But Chris Pratt just simply didn't go to a left-leaning convention, and then he got canceled by some people who were crying wolf, and saying that he was this staunch conservative Republican who was, making a stance against leftist ideology and yada yada. What if he just didn't feel like going? And it's cancel culture, which I don't really like.
Basically, well, since we're addressing this, I want to make it clear that, look, I am no shame of, I'm a conservative Christian, and I am the Satan in Hollywood to them, right? Because I'm a white male Christian, middle-aged, conservative.
Taboo.
Yeah.
In Hollywood.
And so, but the truth is what was I getting to though? The wokeness thing. What was I thinking? I lost my train of thought. What were you talking about, Geraldine? You were saying
the cancel culture, and if you're neutral or if you're conservative,
So even though that's who I am and stuff, and but the truth is this. This isn't a political. This isn't a left and right thing. This isn't Republican, Democrat. Really, if anybody has any honest shred of honesty, they know that this is all the left against everyone else. Because trust me, if you're liberal, if you're conservative, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, whatever you are, if you believe in free speech and you believe in, free discussion of ideas, I disagree with you, but I love to debate you and I think you're crazy, whatever, that's all fair game. That's how life has been in America for most of my life. But the problem is if you're for free speech, you are evil according to the left. And so the left is literally a fascist takeover of the country, and we are all allies against the left. You know what I mean? That's so right. Even liberals out there, you're our allies. We're not we're not fighting you. We're together against the enemy, which is fascism. Yes. and rooted in globalism. Yeah, that's we can go into all that stuff, but on our local level, it's the left is this ideological paradigm that has captured all the institutions. And in my opinion, Democrats and Republicans should be on the same team against the left. And there are Democrats who recognize, like, oh, wait a minute, this is a whole different thing that's going on. So When I talk about that, what's going on with the left in Hollywood, that it was a transformation the last few years. It was a transformation away from just mere political issues into this is the fascistic paradigm that you must follow or you will be destroyed in Hollywood. Like, it's not just that you can't get work. It's like they will destroy you. They will make sure you can never work and eat. They want to starve you to death. This is how these people are actually thinking in Hollywood. And it's all the way from the top to the bottom. And it's come out. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's come out.
Right.
That, there's articles I can show you that, entertainment journalists writing and saying, it's like even the executives are just saying it's like, no, we're not gonna hire white people, everything's got to be women and leftists and minorities and white people are evil, and it's just like crazy to me. I'm like, wow, you really think this way, and it's all in the name of
wokeness.
What right? White men have oppressed us for all these years, so now it's our turn to get back at them and whatever, And this is not politics anymore. This is now racism. Which is why I actually tell people Hollywood is one of the most racist institutions in America. It really is. Oh, yeah. And because of the way they are operating with the diversity and equity, if you understand what that really is, what equity really is, it is out and out racism. And it's in the name of justice, but it's actually racism. And so it's just crazy to me. So anyway, that's part of the package of why I'm now in the parallel economy world, trying to get movies made on the outside of the system, like I always was as an independent. But it's just that in the past, you could make your movies independently and then maybe show them to the distribution companies, and they're so good they go, oh yeah, well, we can make some money on this, But now they won't even take our movies at all, even if they make money, they won't. So
I remember this quote in Animal Farm that the pigs had rallied together, and they were the ones that were oppressed, and then they started rising up the ranks, and then so the pigs started rising up, and then they said that that everybody's equal, but there are more people that are everybody's equal, but there are those that are more equal than others. Right, exactly. And that's kind of how it is in Hollywood.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh, so I guess Miss Christina had dropped off here.
Oh,
Brian, if I can just parlay what you're saying, like there's a mass exodus from Hollywood.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say, you're so brave to go out there and to boldly write these scripts and novels in the face of knowing that it's the fallen angels and the prince of the power of the air that would never allow that to go out there on the big screen. But now, I mean, these movies are so unpopular. You look at like Winter Soldier, where they just make America, they poo-poo everything that was cool about Captain America. And I'm a big fan of some of those old movies. They make all these movies are just a chore to watch. Like nobody wants to watch this stuff, but they're just piping and shoving it down your ear. You got to watch more racism, more weird, gay marriage stuff, like in The Eternals.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It seems like in every single movie, unless you play ball with the and again, we're not, being fascistic and saying, we're not saying that we're homophobic or that we're, against, various races, being that I'm a minority female, of course. Yeah. But I mean, it's like, but why
definitely racist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You guys
white supremacist Thai girl for God.
Right, exactly. Did you know that there's some weird ideology that since the Asians are somehow neck and neck with the white people or whatever, that we're like the privileged minority or something?
Yes.
It's just ridiculous.
Yes. That's what they do in order to justify, because Asians have been so successful. We're talking, this is Harvard and Yale, that Harvard and Yale, Asians have been so successful that they have reclassified them as white in order to justify actual racist persecution against Asians at Harvard and Yale.
I did hear about that. I didn't notice specifically about Harvard and Yale. Anyway, but I'm sorry, reverting back to the former topic. Unless you accept, the homosexual agenda, the LGBTQ agenda, unless you, show, the men and women and boys and girls, being confused, at least one sexually confused, boy or girl, then you're canceled as a movie producer, unless you show,
transgender.
Right, exactly. Right. And I care about those people, and I do pray for those people, and I love those people. And I would say a lot of them are friends, but it's not something that I would espouse for my life, or if I had children, my children's lives. But it's kind of like if we were to say, unless you have a white man, or unless you have an Asian female, or unless you do X, Y, or Z, you cannot be in Hollywood. So that right there is fascistic.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. It's like, it's the old thing of, trying to solve racism with with reverse racism or more racism. But the thing of it is that honestly, this is my profession. This is my calling. I watch a lot of movies and a lot of TV, and I am just less and less interested in it because the ideology, when ideology controls the art, it's not good. It's not good art. And it just gets boring. And I don't care, even if I agreed with the stuff, I'd be bored, because you just see that everything's got to be the same. Everything's got to be the same because it's all got to be in conformity, right? I think it's hurting them. And the more, we use these terms woke, but it's really just the more ideologically demanding they are, that you have to have these factors in there. I honestly see the more and more interest going down, and they're making less and less money. And then you'll have these little side things like a little conservative movies, and they're going to be big blockbusters because everyone's looking for that, right? And
yes.
And that's already happening in some things. Like I've heard the new Spider-Man movie, Far Away from Home. Marvel's going woke with all their characters, but in that particular series, in that particular latest movie, it's still got the strong old school Marvel worldview mentality, which is very conservative in general, right? Now I haven't seen it, but that's what I've heard.
I've seen it.
Okay, and did you get that impression that it's still pretty much old school, or?
I think so. I didn't see a lot of the woke components in it, but I guess that doesn't make it. I guess
there should be there's probably some,
but I think that it's stuck more with the original script from the comic books, from Stan Lee back in the day.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't necessarily think that they're all conservative, but they're just entertaining. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
But I always found it odd that I was surprised how conservative the Marvel Universe was when it first came out, and that's what kind of made me conservative in the sense of their values. When the way the characters obviously lived self-sacrifice over selfishness, but also even things like the whole, even when you get the Wakanda and Black Panther, you think, okay, this one's going to be this is going to have some Black Lives Matter theology. It was the opposite. They were like against immigration. It's like, what? I was amazed. It's almost like Black Panther himself was more like Trump than he was like anything else in terms of his values and stuff. And I'm like going, whoa, that's kind of surprising to me, and so. But I do see them transforming characters, and it's going to the Marvel Universe is going woke, definitely. But
it is,
yeah.
Right?
And but look, as I watch this stuff, I'm losing interest. I'm watching less and less of stuff because when I see another series on where another. I love Assassins. Okay, I admit. But if every single Assassin series is going to be a squad of 6 women, I'm sorry, it's boring. I love women assassins occasionally.
How dare you?
Yeah, I love them occasionally, but like I like some guy assassins in there too. Okay, come on.
Right.
And it's just this extreme pendulum swing that they're doing.
Yes.
And we are losing the masculine heroes that. Right. They're going to still have to be there because there's still a Tom Cruise, there's still a Rock, these guys,
right. Mm-hmm.
and Liam Hemsworth, and they are masculine men, so they will do those movies, but they're much fewer than I've seen ever before, and I'm just like, I'm going back and watching the old Sylvester Stallone movies because that's
so
the guy stuff,
yes. Arnold stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so what I'm saying is, I guess I'm agreeing that it might be a pendulum swing, and people might, they might start to see that, we're not going to make any money. We're making less and less money because of this. But people do have to vote. They have to start recognizing that, look, if this movie stuff is doing more and more values that I don't like, I should stop watching it, even if I want to watch the next Marvel movie or whatever. Whatever right. You have to make some decisions. You have to sacrifice a little bit because otherwise they're just going to keep making it. And this is the big thing that I want to push out there. You have to start supporting, actually with money and sacrifice, the conservative stuff. Even if even if you're not as excited about it, because they need to make money so they can make more movies, and then it grows. So, like for instance, you all have to support. I don't make any money on this, but the Daily Wire, like, go see their movies because they're great. 2 great little movies, and we've got to put some effort and find where they are because they're harder to find.
And we need to promote Brian Godawa's books.
Yes.
This is the thing. Like, there's kids that are just, there's a mass exodus here in Western North Carolina. I just got here from Hawaii, and I'm just blown away by, well, first of all, everybody's white almost, and that's kind of weird for me, like being in all these other diverse places. But it's there's this mass exodus from the system, and homeschoolers, just tons of homeschooling meetings, and we've got to get young adults to read these books. I mean, when I grew up, my mom would take me to homeschooling conventions, and I grew up reading Frankie Peretti's those they had kind of a spin-off of the Indiana Jones. You remember those? Those affected me so deeply, and all it was some young adult fiction
Yeah.
about, and it introduced the idea of that the Bible is still important, and we need to get Moses against the gods of Egypt and these, just your library of stuff. We want to help promote that in this area, but everybody needs to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
You're right. You're right. We need to like consciously support these efforts of the parallel economy where you know that people are doing things of your values. You've got to support them. Like, for instance, I don't like Christian movies in general. I don't tend to like them.
I remember.
Yeah, but they're getting better, and I'm on their side. And so I try to watch when they come out. I try to, like, I'm watching Redeeming Love now. And like I said, what was the other one? American Underdog.
That was a great movie.
Yeah, great movie. And now again, that, by the way, that's just a Hollywood movie that was made through Sony or a firm, and those are Christian directors, and they don't make Christian movies. They're just making good family entertainment, with good values and a little bit of spirituality, and that's enough for me. So movies are still getting made. I'll admit, under the radar in Hollywood, and there are Christians God has blessed some to be able to still make movies, but many others he is not. He's taken away the ability, But
Right.
So we need to support those. So I say you should all go out and rent American Underdog and go see it, because the more money they get at those movies, the more they'll make movies like that. That's the bottom line.
And if I can interject also, have you had a chance to see Moonfall yet?
No.
Okay, so
I did.
get ready for this. Here's why your work, not just writing, but also coming and putting this narrative out there of an alternative, kind of a fringe Christian, alternative science, but actually it's real science.
Yeah.
Narrative. Eventually it bleeds over into the director that made ID4. Sorry. The guy that made 2012.
Roland Emmerich.
Roland Emmerich comes out this movie about the moon being hollow, and it's ancient. Basically, the progenitors of humans the DNA is from like an ancient Atlantean kind of a human system where they were taken over by artificial intelligence, and it gets into every moon conspiracy that we've been just shouting, or more you guys have. I'm kind of new to the game, but I'm watching this. I'm like, how does this exist? And it's a cheesy movie, but it's a huge budget movie. Go and see it. But I just look at that like, what a victory! Like, if we can not only build all independent movie creation, but just affect the narrative of these huge studios and get some of the big names. I mean, it's kind of an FU to the system of AI and global takeover. It's just a miracle that movie exists. Pro-human movie.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, so there are good movies being made in Hollywood, so I don't want to give the impression that it's all gone. There's a definite shift, and it's definitely significant, because long-time Hollywood people leaving California, which is just unheard of, So, but yeah, there are still some good stuff, and our influence is still there in many ways. So.
Now, are you in touch with any of these guys? Like, are you guys forming like a secret new cabal going on there in Texas, or?
Yeah.
Well,
unfortunately, we're not as smart as the left. The left does do that kind of a thing, and so the downside with conservatives is that we are individualist, which is a good thing, but the bad thing about it is we don't know how to organize, and so we're always kind of like just doing our own thing, and so it's all up to you. So as a writer, I'm the low man on the totem pole. I have to seek out producers and try. I do know some in that space, and I'm trying to develop relationships, but it's like I'm the little guy trying to reach up to the big guy and say, hey, I got some scripts I want you to look at, and it's all just individual, trying to develop individual relationships with people and stuff. And it's really tough, because the business of making movies is a grueling, high concentrated for a period of months, and then breaks apart and goes into something else, and so it's hard to develop relationships with people, basically, and that's what you need in order to get things done. So it's tough. It's a tough world, but I do have producers I'm working on potential projects with right now. On the verge of getting funded. Actually, I'm on the verge of getting funded from the one script that we've been wanting to make for so many years, and everyone's going to love it. But I'm not going to talk about it until we actually have money. And the other thing is I actually do have a movie coming out in a couple months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay! That's awesome.
But I do have to tell you, it's very political. So,
Interesting.
if you're willing to talk about it, we can. But
Sure.
It's about Hunter Biden's laptop. So,
That would be interesting. All right.
And it's not a documentary. It's actually a political satire on kind of in the lines of The Big Short or The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh my God!
And so,
wow.
It's even more threatening.
Yeah, so they're in a couple months. Yeah, if my house gets raided, you might see me in jail. But
just tell them like, no. We're revising Moses against the gods of Egypt. So Moses has a homosexual relationship with Ramses.
Yeah. So it's okay. Yeah.
I've noticed that, like, if for some reason, if it's biblically inaccurate, the Hollywood elites are going to push it through up to the ranks, right to your movie theaters and into your home and everything. If it's, I didn't watch it just because I didn't want to watch something blasphemous like that. I mean, even though they didn't come out and say, that Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament was this, jerk of a God, and and everything like that. I mean, they didn't have to. They didn't have to come and say that. As we know that in Hollywood, we don't tell, we show. So they're showing God being this sort of capricious, pernicious child man God.
Temper tantrum.
A temper tantrum, right. And I mean, that's what I read. I think I read one of your reviews on Exodus, Gods and Kings, and the Noah one, and how instead of God destroying the earth because of the
evil,
the sin, and the Nephilim running rampant, and the evil and the wickedness, it was that God had destroyed the earth because the people weren't being kind to. Well, was it oil? Wasn't people weren't being kind to the earth?
People weren't being kind to earth? But the funny thing about it was when he showed the picture of the earth getting bad and evil, he showed black stains growing, and it was clearly a metaphor for oil.
Oh, okay. So that the people were staining the earth or whatever,
with their black sin, and
right, exactly. And so when I read those when I read not only your reviews but also just reviews in general, and all the leftists are like, yay, all right, and I think didn't the producer come out and say that he didn't even believe in God, that he was an atheist? But he just simply wanted to push forth a movie that was biblically inaccurate so that people would believe something that there was like a fanciful notion of his imagination.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing about it, is like, at least, like 50 years ago, a lot of people in Hollywood did believe the Bible, but they realized that, well, if we want to make money and we're going to do a Bible movie, we got to be faithful to it so that people will give us their money. And now they literally don't care if they don't make money. It's just crazy, because you think, I mean, you could literally make $1 billion if you made a great Noah movie, but it's like,
Well, even the Superman movie, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, was super popular because it was the Christ message. It was actually a really positive and Jesus Christ movie.
Yeah, and the more positive Christ message it is, the better. Like, you have negative Christ stories too, right? Where they like to use the Christ imagery, but they'll use it for negative purposes. But if they're like a Superman positive Christ story, you're right. They all sell well
and make a lot of money.
Absolutely. But there's just something about it that so when they make the Moses, Moses was made by atheists, written by atheists. Noah was made by an atheist earth worshiper who also wrote and directed. It's like they don't, and the irony is they've got Christians in these companies. They do, because I remember they were trying to defend it, and they're like defending this, and it's just like like now you've got Christians who are in the Hollywood industry defending something that's anti-Christ. And it's just, isn't there any ounce of logic? We're not even talking morality here, but it's just like, if you're going to reach a certain audience, are you going to let the writer director of Lord of the Rings be a guy who hates Lord of the Rings? No, you don't. You make him a guy who loves it, right? It's just logic, but there is no logic and there's no morality to it. It's, it's the Hollywood does want to make money, but it's not their ultimate value. And Michael Medved wrote about this 20 years ago. He was saying, look, you guys, it's not all about money. Oh, it's about money. It's not. It's all about getting their peer approval amongst themselves. And it's striking, it's basically what is now called virtue signaling. And so Hollywood, and then the money circles us amongst themselves. So they they don't care if they lose money on movies if they feel that it's a religion. So imagine, I wouldn't care if I lost money writing my stories because I need to make money to survive, but you know what I mean? Like I don't care if I lose money because I believe that it's the truth, and that even if a few people read my novels and get the truth, that's okay. I don't need to make a lot of money, right? Well, that's how Hollywood is about their views too. So, don't believe that lie. It's about money.
We look at it like the currency is faith and the winning of souls to Jesus and what eternally we're going to take with us. And the missionary part of me is just looking at this as like a gold mine of, whoa, like we could inspire the youth that are so confused. They're so demoralized. They're just, I heard a recording of a bunch of first graders. I used to teach first grade in Asia, and the teacher's like, guess what? We don't have to wear masks anymore starting tomorrow. Yes. And you hear it sounds like a sound clip. You just hear the whole room go, yay! And it breaks you thinking about these little kids, and they're being tortured in there, and not just their health, but psychologically. Literally, they're so confused. TikTok is ruining all the teenagers' brains. Yeah. And I see this as an opportunity where we can talk to homeschooling Christian, every Christian or not, homeschooling or not. We need to promote this kind of, it's not entertainment, but it is extremely entertaining, biblical, and we should say maybe a little bit extra biblical sometimes, fiction to inspire this next generation, to win souls and get them. I know it worked for me. That's one of the reasons I'm here, is because of books like the ones that you are writing. And that's I applaud you for maintaining course, because there's all this political craziness. And how do you keep inspired during all this when you could listen to Alex Jones all day? And you get caught up in it because you want to keep informed, and there's a lot out there, and then before it's I honestly, I do sometimes have to tell myself, just let it go, leave it in God's hands, and focus on your work. Because for me, I know my calling is not politics, and my calling is to tell my stories. And so if anything, it takes away from that. It takes away from my calling. And so I had, for instance, I was on Twitter for a while, and I still am on Twitter now, but I basically realized that Twitter just sucked up all my time. And even though I felt like I was interacting and, communicating truth, right? I believe that essentially that it's a format for doing that, right? When you're entering into debates with people, whatever. But what happened was it was taking away time from me doing my calling, which is writing my stories. It's like, wait a minute, my calling isn't to be engaging in political discussions on Twitter. And it's like, so I deleted everything I wrote, and I only use it now to check headlines for other people who are doing news stories to keep up on it, right? But I did that not because of the negatives of Twitter, and there are plenty of negatives to cause you not to use it for sure. But I did it only because I need to get my time, all my time spent on my calling, and not waste my time. Yeah. It's more about time waste than anything for me. And so, but Brian, did you hear that Sharon Gilbert got some tweet viralized because Joe Rogan mentioned something that then went out the wazoo, and they were attacking Sharon Gilbert for being a crazy person, talking about the stuff that we talk about. Yeah. And we're all like, yay, we're getting out there, Joe Rogan. I want to see you on Joe Rogan, by the way. I think we need to get this fringe Christian thing. They're calling fringe is like a mainstream word now.
Yeah, why not, man? Yeah, why not?
So let me ask you a question about your writing process. And Geraldine, please, if you have anything too, I know you have a list of things. I'm just so excited to get to talk to one of my superheroes. Brian, have you ever felt like you're actually somehow mystically kind of connecting with the cloud of witnesses when you write quote unquote fiction. Like, do you ever feel like this, like one of these scenes or one of these dialogues that you're almost, I don't want to say channeling, but that you're being inspired by the Holy Spirit to actually almost tap into what might have actually happened? Is that too weird of a question?
Yeah. Theologically, yes. What I mean by that is, because I mean, it is fiction. We don't know how, even if you look, even that series, The Chosen, right, about Jesus, and they're drawing from the Gospels, 90% of it's fiction, because, you're trying to be consistent with the Bible, but no one knows what was really said. And so, even the act of trying to do a non-fictional biography is actually an act of fiction. People don't realize this, right? Mm. So, I mean, even though I'm trying to be truthful and trying to think, hey, could this be the way it happened or whatever, I'm deliberately pushing the envelope on a lot of my stuff. Like I'm not as far, I'm not on as much on the fringe as other people are, but because I'm in the fictional realm, I'm able to push that envelope a little bit more. But in terms of writing, though, I do believe that there are times when I do feel like God's in it. I'm not a Pentecostal, so I don't use that language where it's like, God told me to write this or anything like that. I don't think that way, but how I do think is just that if I'm in tune with God's Spirit and honoring Him, in the course of writing, sometimes you feel the overwhelming presence of Him, and you hope that that's true, and that's how I see it, and that's how I'll say it. I would never claim that God's giving me anything specifically, because I don't know, but I certainly do sometimes sense that in the creativity that occurs, it's sort of like, wow, like particularly when I make some connections while I'm writing that I didn't have. Like, you plan some things out, and theologically you've got some things worked out, but then sometimes when you're writing it, you're discovering a connection that you didn't plan on, and it's like, and it makes it even that deeper. You're like, you learn as you're writing. So there's some of that goes on, and those are moments where you kind of feel whole, like before holy God, oh God, if this is of you, this seems really holy, And so I do sometimes have that sense of holiness about the writing, but I never consider my writing to have any kind of extra spiritual authority to it, but the imagination sometimes touches. I believe it's touching God, and He uses that imagination, in a way that He also uses rationality or other things, So
Wow,
yeah,
fascinating. Well, thank you for that terrific answer. And it's a realm that I guess since we joined this journey of reading the Book of Jasher, which obviously we don't biblically think of that book as totally sound, but it's interesting to read. I'm sure you're familiar with like the Cave of Treasures with Adam and Eve getting tempted by Satan, and it's fascinating fiction. That's where I put that stuff.
And I appreciate you saying that, and I think we have to see it that way, because so here's the thing, because I'm kind of in the Michael Heiser camp. I'm more while I agree with the theology of Heiser in many ways. I don't agree with all of his theology, but I'm very similar to him in the sense of I'm not afraid to go where the Bible says to go, even if it's shocking and doesn't make sense with my modernistic sensibilities. On the other hand, I do believe that there are some Christians that go too far, and I think what's happened is this interest in. We are a part of a movement of what I call the ancient Near Eastern background movement, and what it is it's a growth in the body of Christ of a waking up, of recognizing, hey, we've got to really interpret the Bible as much as we can through the eyes of the original writers and readers, and not through our modern eyes, which is we've been interpreting it through our modern eyes, getting theology off because of that in many ways, missing out on what God's trying to tell us because we're not seeing it through their eyes. And one of the ways in which you do that is go back into their culture and learn their cultural contexts. And that's some of that involves reading what you refer to, pseudepigrapha, apocrypha, Second Temple literature. So I see that there's a group. What I see this fringe community that you're referring to. I think in general we are those people that tend to. We've discovered that other literature, and we've broken from the shackles of the fundamentalist past that says, only the Bible's true. Anything else is false. It's just like, okay, come on. There are other books written by Jews and religious stories and spiritual stories about God, and they don't have to be scripture to be something valuable. And it's okay to say they're fiction, but we can still learn about God from them. And that's a positive element of the movement from my perspective. Thus, we have more of us reading Book of Enoch and stuff. I do see within our circle, I do see there is a fringe that takes it. I mean, I've seen a lot of this where people are quoting this stuff like it is scripture, or it's not like they're saying it's scripture. It's just they're quoting it like, well, because it says in the first book of Adam and Eve, blah 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 blah, like as if it really did happen that way. I'm like, well, no, wait a minute. You do realize that's a legend, and it's saying something about God that might be interesting, but you're quoting it like, in other words, it's almost like they believe everything, and I'm like, no, just because it's like the old Christian evangelical mentality was don't believe anything but the Bible. Now you're believing everything. And it's like, slow down. I'm all for learning, and I love fiction, and I love reading this stuff, and it's fascinating. And I feel like we can learn a little bit about the ancient Jewish mindset from knowing this literature. But I do think we've got to be careful not to start treating it like there's all this stuff is true scripturally, like, or whatever. Like, it's got.
In other words, value. Brian Godawa isn't planning on starting a cult of Gnosticism surrounding Moses against the gods of Egypt. And,
right.
Yeah.
Here's what he actually said.
Do not pray to Jezebel.
And this is why even within the camp of this understanding, I like to use this example because it's like, so we all believe in giants, but it's like, but there's a whole subset of different versions of what you mean when you say giants. And it's like, and there's a whole side of people. And I know Rob Skiba used to, 30-foot giants. And I'm like, no, there's a whole side of us. We're much more restrained. And the word giant, it actually just means tall person. And the truth is that, the largest, the largest dimension for a person, it would be like, I think 9.5, which would be Goliath. And even then there is legitimate Septuagintal, that's the Greek translation of the Old Testament. There's a legitimate scholarly biblical argument that the dimensions of the height of Goliath was not 9'6", but more like 6'9" or something like that.
Oh, wow.
But that's still, it's when the average person's 5'5", that's still a giant. But
that's pretty small. In today's
but imagine,
average height.
Imagine just like a bunch of basketball players. Like there are Maasai warriors who are really tall. It's like that's kind of what they were, And I'm not saying that there couldn't have been some extra tall ones. So in my fictional books, I push the envelope. I do have 10-foot giant. I have 15. Ahiman, the mighty Ahiman that Joshua talks about, is a 15-foot giant. He's one of the tallest in the land. Because I'm fictionalizing and I'm pushing the envelope, and sometimes it can make it look a little bit more than what. We've got to be careful not to let the fiction become the same in our minds as the theological truths we're trying to connect with, right? And so those are just cautions that I would bring to to the fringe community, whatever the community is that we are, that we're
thank
part
you.
of. I call us the Nephilim nuts, but
I like that, using alliteration.
Nuts.
I know that you did.
Too, actually.
Hey, we could go into like some sort of fringe business called Nephilim nuts and have these extra large candies that, you know, like 6-inch candies of the Nephilim or something. You know, you bite off their heads, or you get a free knife and you can cut off the little Goliath head or something. You'll feel like a David or something. It's like, I know, morbid, huh? That's why we're strange o'clock. There is. I was really impressed with one interview, the last interview I think that you did with Derek Gilbert, Josh Peck, Dr. Burton, and yourself, and
so
it was great, and I loved that. I think in that interview, or maybe another one, maybe it was the Blurry Creatures guys, that you discussed how Hollywood is actually adopting, or maybe just unearthing the Book of Enoch in, like, I know that you've seen the Eternals and how all these different what we would have considered superheroes, like Superman, who was played by Richard Madden, and Cersei, and these, you know, the fast young lady, I forget her name. All these different people that were, I guess, there are artistic renditions in artwork and such, you know, or hieroglyphs or whatever, that somehow, I guess, gave testament that there were these watchers that were around in historically. And so anyway, so it seemed like the Eternals movie seemed to adopt that, and I thought that it was interesting that you talked about that. It kind of resembles the Book of Enoch a little bit.
Yeah, no, you know, by the way, that's one that you would think would be easy to make a movie about, because Book of Enoch is a very, very popular thing, and it's an esoteric book loved by all non-religious, religious, Christian, non-Christian, because it's just a fascinating thing. So you'd think they'd be able to make a movie about it, but, you know, who knows? But the influence, yeah, you're right. Basically, the Watcher paradigm, I think, is, you know, like Michael, I think you were saying before, you know, the bleeding influence, you know, they start, you know, and basically they're ripping us off. It's our story lines, really. But because we don't have the power, the control, we don't get our stories out. They get, you know, they ultimately, you know, use our ideas and stuff. But, you know, I remember you know, other than, I mean, all superheroes like Thor, you know, but I mean, those are godlike, right? Obviously. But the first one that was more like the Watcher paradigm for me was the Wonder Woman movie, where like they had the god of war there, Ares, and stuff. And it showed how he influenced, his presence influenced, and that was the whole concept that the Watcher paradigm sort of reflects, you know. It was it was closer to that. And which is a fascinating, you know, which really shows that, of course, now there's a pagan version interpretation, right? And then there's the biblical, or
yes.
You know? And so obviously they've latched onto this, and this is a new. We live in a secular, godless society that doesn't believe, you know, atheistic, right? But they like the gods, and they like them for good stories, and so this is one way for them to tell stories without having to do the Bible way, but they do their own twisted version of it. And the Watcher paradigm is one of the ways that they can spin for their own stories, and it's gonna draw us with interest, because the truth in it is drawing us. But of course, they're gonna twist it, you know.
Yeah, right. And even Wonder Woman herself, in the biblical Enoch's viewpoint, she's basically a Nephilim, right? Because she has a human mother and a Zeus, who would be one of the Watchers' father. So here, you know, it is interesting that the Nephilim, you know, in the Genesis 6, you know, they were these ferocious, vicious, you know, a race of huge people that, were murderous and and cantankerous and whatever, and so they were half fallen angel or slash watcher and half human. But yeah, here's this beautiful Gal Gadot, and she it's like, oh, the Nephilim aren't bad, look at this beautiful woman, or the Nephilim are actually good looking and humorous. Look at Chris Pratt, for example, because he's a Nephilim, right? In Guardians of the Galaxy, right? I just think it's interesting that Hollywood wants to really cause us to accept the Nephilim.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that whole thing of the divine mixing with the human has always been through all of history of religion. Sure. It's theological truth. It's about something. It's not just a creative idea or something. Like, it's about something. Are we gods? Are we sons of gods? Are we made in the image of God? These are all the issues and no matter how atheistic the world gets, they need God, man. They need religion. They need the divine, and it has to get in there. Even if they just do it in their myths and stories, they'll get in there. It'll get in there.
True.
Just like,
sure.
dear Christina said, and how your works really helped draw her back to the gospel and to get away from New Age witchcraft, all that stuff. Likewise, and I had a little miracle happen today. I dropped off my mother-in-law at the airport, and I just sat down. I was trying to contact Geraldine to prepare for this interview tonight and just see what's going on. And I literally was staring at some people riding horses, and my eyes just instantly relaxed. It was almost like unconscious. And I just felt this amazing peace surround me. And right then, this guy walks right up to me, and he looks down at me and he says, "You look like an interesting person." And then he sits down next to me, and we just talked for 20 minutes about life. And turns out he's a guy that grew up in the conservative home, didn't like the way he was forced to be Christian, went off into the left area of whatever. And you could tell he was just searching. And and he said, "I'm at a place now where if you had told me that you were a Christian a year ago, I would have just gotten up and left. But now I'm open. Tell me the name of your podcast." That's cool. And there's people out there, and I look at your work as a bridge to bring people out of that church box and open the door, open the window a little bit, show them there's more out there that they're not telling you in the church pulpit. Yeah.
No, you make a good point. And I think so. Here's the thing that drove me from the start. And it was basically, it was a risky proposition 12 years ago, when I decided that, or when I came to the realization that God uses imagination to communicate truth, and I let go of my sort of what I call my evangelical shackles of hyper-literalism, where I kind of felt like, like the Bible is supposed to be this science book and everything's supposed to be precise, and the way we write history, the way we write science, it should all match up and all this stuff. It's like, no, it's ancient documents, got to be understood on its own terms. And it's like, and so the use of imagination, God uses he doesn't use science and a lot of propositional argumentation. He uses a little bit, but he doesn't use a lot he mostly uses stories and poetry and this kind of stuff and imagination. And so when I thought, when I'm going to write my stories and I'm going to retell Bible stories, I'm going to let my imagination affect it. And it was risky because at the time, my understanding would be Christians were not like that, because you're playing with the Word of God, and you know what? I'm surprised to say they didn't. That most Christians have gotten, and I have had very little attacks on me. Maybe because I'm not famous enough yet, but maybe if I do, I'll get more attacks. But I feel like I was freed from a kind of a bondage. And I used imagination interacting with the Bible. This isn't just, Lord of the Rings or Narnia. That's a different world, but I'm actually doing the same imagination with the Bible.
Oh, wow.
But see, that was what I had actually come to conclude, was that God himself was using redeeming pagan imagination. when you read about Leviathan, this giant sea dragon in the Bible shows up in multiple passages. And, I have a new book coming out called Leviathan and Behemoth, and it's going to be coming out in about a week. Short book, little booklet, all about this stuff. But, and I'm like, it's not that it's a dinosaur. It's not that it's this or that. It's really, even if it is a real creature, which I don't think it is, it's used in the Bible as a metaphor for something very theological, But guess what? It existed. The concept of it existed 1,000 years before Israel, in the land of Canaan, Leviathan, and it's used the same way it's used in the Bible. So it's like. So that means God took something that was known and understood in a pagan context to mean something. It was a mythological creature that has to do with chaos, and that the god Baal, the storm god, would conquer the chaos waters, conquer the sea dragon, and bring and then he would rule as that allows him to rise to the supreme level of the gods and build a throne. He gets enthroned as king, right?
Wow.
Well, the Bible's using the same concept, but saying, no, Yahweh's the one who's enthroned after conquering the seas and the sea dragon, et cetera, et cetera. So I saw this usage, what I call redeeming pagan imagination, and this is just one little example. And sure, liberals say, oh, the Bible's just, the Bible just takes all these pagan religions and it just changes them around and makes up a new religion, which means it's nothing unique or original. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. It's something far deeper, richer, and much more full of imagination, which is, it's like, the ancient writers are using the similar concepts the way they thought back then, right? But they're capturing the language, they're capturing the imagery, they're capturing the imagination, and pointing towards Yahweh. And so it's like, no, Yahweh is the storm god who defeats the sea dragon of chaos.
Exactly.
And it's like, and no, we don't believe in myths and myths that aren't true. No, they're using poetry and imagery just like we do. We make movies. We don't believe the movies are real. We don't believe they're myths. We're telling stories to embody truths that we believe about the universe. And so, I'm not saying the Bible is a book of myths or anything. What I'm saying is,
right.
Even though it's clearly telling some historical truths, obviously, of God's truth, actions in history, yes. But within the course of human experience, we all have this interaction with poetry, imagery, imagination, and things like Leviathan are things that God does. And so if God redeems pagan imagination, then why can't we? And why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we be, telling Christian vampire stories? I don't know. It's like whatever, the change that happened when I started writing the novels was that revelation of, I can understand God better with imagination than I can without. And that means I have to understand how imagination interacts with theology and with his word and all this stuff. And that was a transformation in my Christian faith, because I'd always felt like, I had imagination, that God liked art. Because, that's something you can enjoy, and as long as it's within his parameters, you're okay. But when I came to realize, it isn't just that he likes art, but that he uses art itself as a means of understanding him. It's not just a sermon analogy or a sermon illustration. It's that the art itself is the way through which you contact the divine. And so, and that he does so redeeming the world around us, like Leviathan and such, and Behemoth. And so that was the transformation that occurred in me, that I just said, screw it. I'm going to let my imagination, I'm going to let God hopefully guide my imagination. But I mean, I'm going to interact with this pagan world of the ancient world and retell these Bible stories, because God is the God of imagination, and I don't have to deny the pagan imagination or be afraid of it. I can capture it and redeem it for Christ. And so in all my novels, I try to embody the actual context that the Israelites were in, whether it's Baal, the Canaanite religious Baal, and retell their stories. Like the Baal epic is it, like I retold some of the Baal epic within the Jezebel novel. If you read my novel, you're going to learn the actual Baal epic, whether you know it or not. That's the storyline that I'm in there, you know, and that I'm using in there. But I'm redeeming it by capturing it and submitting it to the authority of the biblical worldview as I understand it with the imagination, you know? And so, yeah, that was so what I'm getting to is I do think there's a revolution of imagination going on in the Christian church. And I think there's some good and there's some bad. I do see some bad. I see some abuse of it, you know, but in general, I think it's the ability. There's a long blabbering thing to connect with what Michael, what you had like talked about with. I've been surprised to see people telling me like, you know, yeah, I lost my faith, or, you know, I was dead in the faith, but I reading your novels and it like brought the Bible alive to me again and renewed my faith. And I'm like going, really? Oh, I guess, yeah, that's what the imagination, like God had done that to me. And all I did was, like I said, I don't have a super spiritual sort of way of putting it. But I do believe that God can anoint imagination and that he's using that. Or so if I'm being authentic and just trying to humble myself before God, he'll use you, right? And so if you can do that with your stories, what I mean by that is when you write a story, you write with you write in a way that is it's hard to tell. It's hard to explain. It's being vulnerable as you're telling. When you're writing, you're being vulnerable and you're revealing the truth of who you are, with all the bad and the good. You know, ideology will make only the other side look bad and only make you look good, right? But when you're being honest and truthful, you're revealing your own badness. That's what I'm getting at, right? And so when I'm writing those stories, I'm doing that, and I think that God honors that by, I think that's what's happening is people are seeing that openness and honesty. I don't have this agenda of trying to manipulate anybody or do anything. I'm just trying to embrace the imagination of God. And I think that's what people might be connecting with. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm trying to make sense of what you said and what I've seen occur a lot too. Something I didn't anticipate.
How I view your stories, Brian, well, first of all, let me revert to how I view your talent is that you're able to blend your historical research with the emotionality and the relationships dynamic into that, and so it's definitely takes a creative mind, the creative mind of God through you, to blend those two together, because it seems like people are usually one or the other, you know, that they seem to either be kind of you know, into just historical research that might be construed as maybe kind of dry or whatever, and then or, you know, it's maybe you know, just kind of like a chick flick or something, you know, just full of emotionalism, but, you know, a lot of fluff, but not really like a solid story. So it's awesome that you're able to blend those two, marry those two worlds together. And that, I think that's what is so appealing to a Christian audience. I know for me, I just couldn't just sit there and read the Book of Enoch, you know, just because for me it seems a little kind of cut and dry, you know. But when I heard the Book of Enoch through the audio book, I was like, oh, I can really get into these characters, and plus I understand the Watcher paradigm and how. So instead of just, okay, well, here are these, you know, rebellious fallen angels. who are watchers, that rebelled against God, and this fallen angel did that, this fallen angel did that. It was like I could really sense what it's like to be in their shoes, and I just love how you marry those two together, and so that's why. So I think it appeals to the left and right side of people's brains. Like some, I guess, what do they say? The creative people are right brain, and the kind of more analytical people are left brain or whatever. And it's I think you if they showed a CAT scan of your brain, I think it would be completely just full of colors all over.
Yeah, I would be bipolar or something because I love intellectual, I love all that stuff, but I just love stories and entertainment.
Yes.
And I do feel sometimes like I'm an odd fellow in both worlds and stuff. And because that is how I write, and I think that, but so I just figure, so my personal goal then, as I see it, is as God has gifted me, is that I do the research and the study that many Christians don't, and it's too in depth, too much. It's not for everyone, whatever, I don't know, but all this deep stuff that I like to study, I just love it just because I love it, but it would be a waste if I just do it for myself. And so because I love telling stories and I'm able to embody my theology that I study into the story, I actually I mean, I may be wrong. Different people like different things. So I have theology books that I write, but then I also have my novels, and I try to put what's in the theology books in the novels. But the truth is I personally feel that like my 4 apocalypse novels, for example, it deals with eschatology, right, and Book of Revelation. So it's like, but it's a very unique viewpoint. It's definitely not the common viewpoint out there. But I do believe it's the best way of communicating it. Some people just prefer Bible study, and that's fine, and I provide some of that elsewhere. But I just feel like, yeah, but you can do all this study, and you think you got all the charts down. But there's a reason why Left Behind was huge, even though I think it's a terrible, horrible theology. Okay, I still feel like, but it was the hugest influence in history for theology because it was just they told a good story. Now you could argue that it wasn't very, you could make arguments about the story, but I mean they did something right because they told, and I think people got it. They understood the theology better in the context of personal drama, human drama. Yes. And that's what I did with my series. And I didn't do it to copy Left Behind. I just did because it was in part of my series. And, but I do feel like, of all, I mean, listen, I read and used 1,000-page Bible commentary by a theologian as my dominant reference to write my 4 novels. Written by Ken Gentry, and it's not out yet, but it will be hopefully soon. But I realize not everybody likes doing that, but I used that and I referenced it, and I made it alive by the story, and I just feel like not everyone agrees with this, but I just think it's the most effective means right now of communicating the theological truths, because there's something about seeing it in dramatic human action that makes it come alive. So anyway, but that's
agreed.
Yeah,
agreed.
I come from a classical music family. My father's a classical violinist. The only guy in the Naples Philharmonic not to get vaccinated, so he's on hiatus right now because
they
don't let you even go to a concert if you don't have the shot. He's the concert master, which is kind of a big scandal going on in Naples, Florida right now. But I was raised with that sense of the ancient art, not ancient, but the Renaissance art and all great art, Bach and just Michelangelo and these incredible frescoes and stained glass windows, and even the medieval art being all to the glory of God. And I read the Canterbury Tales when I was living in Tokyo, and it was the first novel that kind of veered away, but it had to disguise itself. It was a Christian novel, kind of, but it just gave you such a vivid picture of that era. And everything was Christian, giving glory to God, and we've kind of lost that focus with art. Everything's entertainment. Everything's like, I'm bored. Let's watch something. And I feel like you're bringing us back to that, Brian. You're kind of you're definitely not kind of, you're absolutely glorifying God in your work. And your heart is, oh, if we could make a movie with this, but you're not waiting for a movie deal. You're just going to write that story.
Yeah.
And you're totally winning souls. I mean, we just had one in the beginning of the show. It's just,
Yeah.
I just want to applaud you for that.
Yes,
And
definitely.
people should understand it takes a lot of courage to break away from the Hollywood thing. And we pray for more Brian Godawas, but I don't know if we're going to get any more. So just
We're going to clone you.
There's another, there's lots of other lessons in here, and I think that there's there's something about living life that comes out of this for me personally, in that I never dreamed of. Look, I don't see myself as I'm not being falsely humble here. I'm no great American novel writer. I know that. I'm a decent writer. I'm a good storyteller, but I'm not like the great American novelist, And I just love telling stories, and I'm working hard, and I'm trying to get better, that kind of a thing. But I started many years ago with a dream and a passion to make Hollywood secular movies with a Christian worldview kind of thing, Chariots of Fire. That was my inspiration. And I did it for many years. And, I did actually make one or two like that, and I'm proud of them, etc. Not that one wasn't able to get much of it done, but it was totally worth it, and I loved it. But along the way, I had to be realistic, because my dream was not accomplishing. I wasn't able to survive. It wasn't making enough money to live, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to reinvent myself. And that's when I started realizing that maybe I needed to start expanding my storytelling, because I had a few difficult years with movies and stuff. And that's when I started novel writing. And then there's a video that you all got to see. It's at Prager University called... Don't Follow Your Dreams, or something like that. It's by the guy who did Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe. And
Mike Rowe. Okay.
Yeah, if you look up Mike Rowe and something about Don't Follow Your Dreams, because the whole thing of it is, and the example he gives is Hollywood too. It's like if you hear some, in every award show, the person gets up there and says, "Follow your dreams." It's like, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. There's a few lucky people who get that opportunity. But what you need to do is follow your opportunities.
Right.
And I had to get to the point in my life where I was open to not doing. I'm not going to do that, because I want to follow my dream. But when my dream wasn't working out right, I had to do something else. And I embraced the novel writing. And it's like, some people that's their dream in life, is to be a novel writer. It really isn't for me. I want to tell stories. And novel writing is particularly hard. It's not my first choice. I still to this day prefer writing scripts. And some people will critique my books like that. He's obviously a Hollywood screenwriter, because he does, he writes his books like scripts, right? But what I'm getting at is, I followed the opportunity, and I opened myself up to God, and I said, you know what, Lord, this isn't about what I want. It's what you want. I believe you've gifted me telling stories. And this novel seemed to work pretty well, so I'll pursue this. And it's exploded, and it's become far more. I've made far more money with my novels than I ever did in Hollywood movies.
That's awesome.
And look, as an
Praise
artist, that's a realistic thing. Making money, it's not everything, but it's good. It's a good thing. I also believe that it has enabled me to utilize a part of me that I wasn't using in screenwriting. So I'm more holistically being used in my storytelling. More people are reading my stories and being affected by them. So there's all these factors that I never anticipated, right? And it wasn't the thing I wanted to do, but I followed the opportunity rather than being stuck on the dream, and sought to honor God with it. And when you do that, God honors you and blesses you,
Yes.
back. And so here I am now, where I feel like it's just amazing. Like, I'm writing the coolest stories of them in my life. I've never, I still am working on some movie prospects, and I want to make movies, but I don't need to, because I wrote a script for the movie Jezebel. It's the coolest Bible script ever in Hollywood. It should get made. If it got made, it would blow things away because it's a lead, right? For a woman, which is perfectly woke right now in today's culture. You got to be a woman's got to be the lead. She's got to be a queen. She got, right, all that stuff. It's got all those factors, but it's also very biblical. But I don't care if it ever gets made because I wrote the novel, and the novel got out, and and so it's like it's a blessing. It was a blessing to me that I'm like, I just want my version of the story. I don't care if it's not in a movie, and so it gives me the ability to do the movie projects I believe in rather than I have to do them, right? So that's been a blessing. Wow.
Who would you have play Jezebel?
Well, when I originally, it's kind of old. I think I wrote it like 10 years ago now or something like that. I'm amazed.
Wow.
No, it couldn't have been 10 years. No, it couldn't have been 10. Wait a minute. More like 8, maybe 7 years ago or something like that. But
wow.
It was always like, for me personally, it's always been Angelina Jolie. She's too old for it now, but it was sort of like a young Angelina Jolie.
That's who popped into my mind too. Yeah. Wow, weird.
She just
Spirit
has
is right.
That presence.
Right.
And especially when she was younger, she would have been like awesomely perfect for it.
Right.
Now,
she would have.
I don't know. I don't think as much about. I don't think as much about casting when I write movies.
Sure.
I think more in terms of the character, like what kind of character. Now, sometimes I do think of like, oh, this is like a Bruce Willis cop, or I do think a little bit like that. But in terms of thinking of an actual guy to cast. I don't usually do that. Some writers do, and it does help them to write, but I don't.
It's funny when I listened to the Book of Enoch audiobook, I just sometimes to help me try to visualize the character. Sometimes I'll think of a popular actor or actress to embody that role in my mind's eye, like like I was trying to envision what Edna, the young lady Edna, would look like, and I was for whatever reason I was thinking that Methuselah would look like Ryan Phillippe for some reason, and I was like, okay, wait a minute, why did that pop into my head? It was so funny, but how we sometimes we think of somebody that we are already familiar with and try to put them into the role of whatever book we're reading,
By the way, that's the imagination. That's how the imagination helps you process the abstraction of the words you're hearing. It helps you to make sense of it by making it concrete. And that's what I'm talking about, where that imagination aspect of who we are is the thing that has been a ministry for me for many years now, understanding how that applies to faith and theology and understanding God, not just the arts, but it's like, no, it's a part of your interaction with God and understanding God. And I think
as a creator.
As creator. Yeah. So,
That's right.
And by the way, I'm the first to say, listen, I love logic and I love apologetics. And, I've told my whole story about, how my Christian journey has been predominantly intellectual. And it's only been in the second half of my life where I was able to sort of embrace more of the imaginative side into my faith, not just into my art. And that's a whole issue. But
we should do a show just about that. That gets into some deep psychology as well, but and just the nature of reality. I was just, as you were talking,
this is Jordan
Brian,
Peterson material.
Yes.
Sometimes you're speaking things that are so beyond what I feel like we can talk for a long time about this.
He does voices
that I cannot put into words. They're so deep.
That's great.
Michael Crichton. Have you ever read any of Michael Crichton novels?
Yeah, he's my favorite novelist, actually.
I guess he's probably the most successful novelist ever, but
probably, yeah.
I've been a huge fan of his. I was reading his novels when I was way too young. My parent, homeschooler, parents weren't checking. I used to count how many bad words were on each page and be like, Mom and Dad don't know about that. Very worldly novelist, I guess. I mean, he found G.K. Chesterton at the end of his life. And
oh, really?
he was a Catholic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Read the appendix of the last novel he wrote, Next, I think, or one of the last published novels.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was long. We could talk about him a lot, but one of the things that he said was just that he didn't even think of himself as such a great writer per se, but he just worked freaking hard and did the research. And so when you're reading a Michael Crichton novel, you're actually getting an education about paleontology and botany and whatever, physics. And I really look at the importance of the background of research that you're doing and connecting with these communities of whatever, Fringe Christian and Michael Heiser and just that understanding. And then when you're writing, you're bringing all that power. Like, people don't even know there's like this nuclear arsenal behind everything.
Yeah, no, that's
it's
true.
So cool.
But I write in a way that you don't have to, because my number one priority is entertainment. And when I'm writing a scene, I'm like, my goal is this scene better be interesting or entertaining in some way, or it's not going to be here. And so that's my number one drive. But what you're saying is true. And I just did it. I do it because it's like, I do it for Tolkien reasons. It's like, I do it because I want to do it, not because I want it to be discovered or, or I think it's going to make it great. It's just, and the funny thing is too, because, you're always learning and growing. I'm always adding tidbits into some of the novels as I learn, as years later. For instance, after I wrote the Moses novel, I had already written Joshua Valiant and Caleb Vigilant, which was the story of the conquest of the Promised Land. Well, the problem was that because Moses was the prequel to that, and I wrote it afterwards, I did a lot of research on Moses I didn't have when I did research for Joshua, but I didn't have as much as I had, and it caused me to change some key elements in my Joshua and Caleb novels. And so I actually ended up doing rewriting some scenes and adding some major elements, and even years after I've written it, because I just want it to all work together, so that, sorry for all the fans who already love my stuff and feel like, you're going to miss out on some of the new additional things, but hopefully one day anyone will be able to pick up that series and just see all the connections that go through all of the novels, because of the fact that as I've gone on, I've gone back in and tweaked and stuff. And that's the benefits also of self-publishing, is you're able to do that one, whereas in traditional publishing, nope, you might get one or two editions, but you can't make those changes. So I love being able to update things, and I found corrections, errors. Fans have pointed out errors or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, so I go fix that. And it's just cool.
Oh, it's so amazing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Wow, that's the beauty of self-publishing, and for new writers out there, which I know quite a few that are trying to get out there. Where's the best place to start? Like, would you recommend self-publishing on Amazon or Smashwords, or just finding some company and agency, like in this day and age with the internet, with Audible and or Amazon and Sony, and where would you get started? How do we clone more mini Brian Godawas?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to be biased in self-publishing. Tradition. See, here's the thing, you guys. Leftism has captured everything. It shocks me to say this, because I know that most people aren't leftist, but they've captured all the organs of power and information in our society, and that includes publishing. And so leftism, it's the same way. If you're a white male, don't even bother trying to get a publisher. I'm serious. And by the way, if you are a woman and if you're a lesbian or if you're a woman of color, I was like, this is your chance,
I have 2 out of 3 of those.
2 out of 3. There you go. Like, I have friends who, I know people who are blacks in Los Angeles now, and I'm like, they're getting work now where they didn't before. I'm more power to you. That's the way the system is right now. They're only giving work to you, so you're gonna get all the jobs. So I'm not gonna. If I was black, I would stay there and get work. But my point is being realistically, if you want to be a writer and stuff, and you're not woke, everything has to be woke now in the publishing industry.
Sadly.
And so if you're not leftist and you're going to have any hint of biblical values, now, obviously you're going to try to go for Christian publishers. That's true too, but there's so little money in it. Not money. There's so little opportunity. They're only looking for big blockbusters. The chances are so small. But I realize that there are some people who still believe in the traditional route of publishing. It has to do with if you want to have a writing career and all this, and there's this certain sort of traditional writing career approach that still exists. I don't believe in it anymore, only because the publishing industry has been so captured that, like, if you're a writer, I thought you want to write truth. So if you want to write truth, you don't want to write in the traditional publishing realm, because they don't publish truth anymore.
Right.
And they only publish ideology. And the same is true for Christian publishers. They're captured by a lot of woke, not all of them, but they're very corrupted as well. And the truth is that they also are restricted by certain things, like you can't write certain like, if you're a Christian and you want to write an R-rated book, you're not going to get it published, right? So
Darn it.
So yeah, I mean, look, there was a time. I believe there's a place for that stuff. Now I've realized also though that there's a place for not having it there. So, but my point is that when I wrote my novels, no Christian publishers would take them. They just couldn't understand it. It's like, it's too wild. It's too imaginative. It's the Bible and imagination. Like I said, it's kind of like the Bible meets Lord of the Rings. That's going too far, And secondly, I wasn't that good of a writer at the time either. So maybe that's part of it too. But
look at you now.
Right. But I'm saying I'm making far more money than I would have made with a traditional publisher. And
that's amazing. Praise God.
And I think there's just room for you, but there's a problem with it. And the problem is that means you're going to have to do a lot of extra work. And it's a full-time job for me, literally a full-time job. And because it's not just about writing your next book. If you're a writer, you want to write a lot of books. But it's about being wise about what you're writing, understanding the market. It's about marketing your material. You have to market it. If you don't market it, you're not going to sell it.
Right.
And so if you're going to be a self-published author, you have to do everything. And it's a whole long process. Okay. And so if you really want to be a writer, it's just a question of, I don't know, what do you want out of life? If you want to go the traditional route, fine. I mean, that's still a legitimate way. I don't believe in it anymore, but people can do it. In my opinion, it's usually more like celebrities who can do that because, they'll get big money behind their books and stuff. If you're just a good writer, they're not going to put much money behind your books. They're just going to slap it up with the latest releases and keep moving. And if yours draws attention, then they'll, but I have had a couple of books published. One of my books is still being published after 15 years about movies. And it doesn't sell huge, but it just sells consistently, right? But that makes me a mid-level writer, and I don't make big bucks. So they don't put any money into me, and they don't care. And so the truth is even if, and the funny thing is I learned, if you come to them today, to a publisher, and they're going to want to see that book, and they're going to ask you, okay, what's your social media platform like? How many followers do you have? They're going to they expect you to do your own already. They expect you to do your own marketing
publicity.
Anyway. Yeah. So it's like, well, if you're going to have to do most of the work anyway,
right.
Why have them,
What a weariness. Yeah, that's exactly true. I mean, you could just build a giant Instagram and market to those people.
But you have to embrace, if you want to be a writer, if you just want to write, I'd like to write a book. Because I've always wanted to write a book. Then just do it and slap it up on Amazon, and it won't sell, but it'll be fun. But like, if you want to be a writer, make a living out of it, you can do it. The self-publishing industry, you can make it happen, but you gotta do it right, and you can't just start slapping it up there. You've got to have strategy. You got to learn. And the best way to do that is I recommend everybody to do what I did. I went and bought online courses on how to do it step by step. And then and that's how I learned it. And then, and so now I do everything. And I recommend Mark Dawson's Self-Publishing 101 course, or Nick, can't remember his name, but it's your first 10,000 readers, your first 10,000 readers. I don't know, it's like $600-700 or something, but you pay it, but you get like dozens of classes, and it's all online, and you got eternal access to them, and it's step by step for everything you have to do and learn. It teaches you about every aspect of the business of self-publishing, from writing the book. I think some of them offer how to write novels too, which if you should do that if you don't already know, and then
that might be help. That might help.
Yeah.
Square one.
By the way, yeah, if I really should have said that first. Like, if you're interested, you better be educated, because you don't just set out and write a novel. Just like people think, oh, I think I'll write a screenplay. It's like, yeah, basically work for 5 years studying and practicing writing a screenplay. Then your first screenplay will be in about 5 years. Same thing with a novel. It's like, yeah. So I would say study novel writing and take a class on how to write a good story, how to write novels and all that. And then, or if you've already been doing that and you've got some ground, but you have to see it as a commitment, a big commitment, or it's just, you'll sell a few, but you're just not going to sell much. It's an industry, and it requires a lot of work, but it can be done.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, so I just thought you just go on Derek Gilbert's show one time, and then you're a superstar. They're going to buy 1 million. God, but I do admire your persistence in coming on all these different shows. I've heard you literally on everybody, and just been like, man, this guy works hard, and he's willing to just put his voice out there and engage with Michael Heiser people. And it's an experience beyond just entertainment and reading. It's like you're a part of this, whatever. I mean, this is a part of history, what you've done.
No.
And we're proud to be here too.
And it's just, I just accept who I am. I'm a little guy. I'm nobody special, and so therefore I don't look down on any shows. I'll go on just about any show that will have me, because the way I see it is, however many number your viewers are, those few more people will now hear about me. And if I'm on 100 little shows, in other words, the common thing, you want to be on a big show. I want to be on Tucker Carlson or whatever, right? It's like, no, I'm never going to be on those shows, because I don't sell books like that. I don't sell that many books. So I'm like, well,
just a matter of time.
Yeah, I'll go on podcasts for people like me, and but if I'm on 100 little podcasts, well, that's 100 times 100 people each, and then that presence is those 100 videos also are more accessible, so it's just a matter of just getting out there and being out there, and it's not a matter of being with, the more important higher. It's about talking to your people, talking to the people who like the stuff you like, and I would rather be on a podcast, a Nephilim nut podcast, with 1,000 Nephilim nuts, than some big Eric Metaxas or something with thousands of viewers. They'll be interested in it, but people who really like the stuff really are more committed, and they're more likely to get involved and buy your works and stuff like that, so.
I like the way you think, Brian, and that's why I've had you on for 5 times, and thank you so much for stepping down to my little level when I only had around 5 or 10 listeners, and
little too.
and now well, I'm not saying that we're in the big leagues, we're not even in the medium leagues, although Michael is, not me though, but I only through the kindness of strangers that leveled up to the Fringe Radio Network, and how long we're going to float there. It's instead of like stepping stones, more like parallel stepping stones that help you go further. All these, like you said, 100 little podcasts, like ourselves, and then also it just gets the word out to people that are more likely to to purchase your books and watch your movies and things like that. I do have to ask you, Brian, about this interesting movie that you wrote and produced, or did you just write for? It was in the Philippines, and it's been a few years. It was a wonderful movie, and I cried and I laughed, and now I'm forgetting the whole premise of the story. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. It was. I think it had to do with
I'll look
street
it up.
children.
Street Children.
Yeah,
That was a
and-
beautiful movie.
Yeah, so I got called by this ministry guy who was part of a ministry helping these kids, and they wanted to, they believed the power of movies to get people to get interested in helping out, right? So they wanted a movie about, so I heard about the stories of the little kids on the streets, and it's interesting because it's kind of similar, and it started out actually in somewhere in China, I think, was where it actually started out, but then because of budget and stuff, they kept changing, and then it ended up being done in the Philippines, right? But the truth is these kids are everywhere, so it's just they've got this whole culture of children living underground in the sewers and stuff and all this. And so they just wanted to tell, it was a fictional story, but based on the kind of things that happen to these kids, and they get sold into slavery and stuff like that. So,
and it was
what's it called? Because the name changed several times. Something like Love's First Light or something like that. But you can find it on my IMDb. It's kind of a cheap movie, So
I thought it was great.
They did a good job of. It was like no budget. You know what I mean? Like,
right?
They did a good job. They did a good job for no budget. I was impressed with that. But yeah, I think it's.
I was very impressed with it. It was like you said, it really shone the light on children in the streets and human trafficking and things like that. I'll have to rewatch it. And I really did like that movie.
I'm trying to find that. I really want to know what the name of it is.
I actually typed in Brian Godawa and Love. Like Love's. I was thinking Love's First Light.
Where
or something
Love
like that.
Found Me.
Okay, Where Love Found Me.
Where Love
Love Found Me. Okay.
Wow.
Where Love Found Me. Okay.
Although I actually one that I kind of like, it's pretty good, was Alleged. That was about the trial. I've lost my memory here.
Brian, when we finish the podcast, off air, I'd like to ask you some ideas that we could maybe collaborate business wise as far as promoting your material.
Sure.
We're just getting this new project up and started, and this is our downtown office, and we're having people come in constantly that are potential customers, and
cool.
There's just a million things that we're doing, but I just feel like there's a way that we could maybe collaborate and help get your books in more people's libraries and laps.
Sounds
and
good.
So as soon as we're done here, Geraldine, did you want to add anything to the end of this, or can we just
I think that I said everything I
I'm
wanted
done.
to say. Well, Brian
Godawa needs no
yes,
It's
he
11
needs
o'clock.
no introduction.
where can we find everything that you will get 100% of the profit, not Amazon?
Well, no. Amazon is the reason why I'm alive. So
Okay.
I hate to say it because there's a lot of dangerous bad. This is a difficult world we live in, but Amazon is the only way that I was able to ever make a living. And as much as I do believe that Amazon does a lot of bad things, but they're the only ones that allowed me to sell my books and make a profit. So realistically speaking, yeah.
Amazing.
And I've tried selling through other avenues before years ago. It just didn't work. But so it's a tenuous situation too, because if I ever get in trouble, with my views and they cut me off, they cancel me, But
Add some lesbian romance and you'll be fine.
yeah, that's true. But seriously though, everything's at Amazon, and you look up my name and you'll see all the different series, and you could read about the series and stuff. Almost all my books are in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. And but if you're if you want to look more into me, Godawa.com is my website. I've got all kinds of tabs on material, free videos I've made, little shorts and funny ones, and horror, and but as well as I cast all my novels, so you could see little pictures of who might be cast in my novels. Not actors, but like characters from stock photography type stuff. So there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of free articles related to the material I write. So you can find out more information on me and my stuff at Godawa.com. But if you want to, look into what books to check out first, just do my name in Amazon. You'll find everything there.
And your blog is very well updated as well. Like, I mean, it's not like a dead site. Go to Godawa.com and bookmark that, because I mean, you're posting your latest interviews. Hopefully you'll share our interview as soon as we get it up there. And I love that view from the bunker. I listened to that at work and I was just like, this is why I want to be more a part of this movement. And I think it was like the day after or so that Geraldine was like, yeah, we're going to interview Brian Godawa, baby. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Bless you, Michael. Bless you.
Thank you, please bless me.
So it's funny with Professor Burton, Professor Judd Burton. We were after the show, we were like sending him like Wayne's World memes, like we're not worthy, we're not, and we're gonna do the same thing for you, but we're gonna do it live. Yeah. We're not worthy.
We talked about this. We need to stop worshiping our guests.
I know exactly. Yes, I need to take down.
But it's so hard not to.
I do concur.
We have to take down the Brian Godawa bobblehead. By the bedstand right there. Anyway,
well, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Brian. Don't go away. We have a few things to discuss offline here. I'm Michael Basham, Spirit Wars Fringe Radio Network, and this is Strange O'Clock Podcast.
And I'm Jeri Kozak, still with Amazing Grace Radio, with a collab with this guy, Michael Basham, with this duo of Strange O'Clock Podcast.
They will all soon be on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes. We're about to do that. So this is literally the launch of this project. So very proud to be here. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you so much, Brian. We're so happy and blessed to have you on board the Strange O'Clock train. Choo choo! Thank you so much for listening and or watching the Strange O'Clock podcast with Michael and Jeri, in which we interviewed our esteemed guest Brian Godawa, as well as had our fun friend Christina join us. We are looking forward to hearing from you, so please email us at strangeoclock@yahoo.com. That's STRANGOCLOCK@yahoo.com. Also, you can find our Facebook, which should be Strange O'Clock Podcast, and this can also be viewable on YouTube, so just search for it under Amasian Grace Radio. That's AMASIAN Grace Radio, and have a strange and wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are at in the world. God bless.